The weight behind the smile, the cameras were everywhere. The lights were bright, hotter than anyone expected, and the crew rushed from one corner of the set to another. It was supposed to be a perfect day. Ana de Armas was in the middle of a very emotional scene, one that required her to cry and fall apart in front of the camera. She had done it many times before, but this time something was different. As soon as the director shouted action, she tried to go into the scene, but her voice broke too soon. Her hands trembled. The tears came too quickly. Not the kind of tears the script demanded, but the kind that carried a hidden pain. The crew thought she was simply acting better than usual. They leaned in, whispering to one another about how real her performance felt. But Keanu Reeves, standing just behind the cameras, knew something was wrong. He had seen enough people in his life break down to know when it wasn't acting. Keanu had a way of watching people without making them feel judged. And in that moment, his eyes caught the truth. Ana wasn't performing. She was breaking inside. The director shouted cut and clapped his hands, smiling with excitement at what he thought was a perfect take. But Ana didn't move. She stayed on the floor, her shoulders shaking, her breath unsteady. There was silence. For a second, then nervous laughter from a few crew members, thinking she was staying in character for dramatic effect. But the silence grew heavier, and finally, everyone realized this wasn't part of the scene. Ana covered her face, whispering words no one could hear. Her body shook as she tried to get up, but she couldn't. The weight of everything she had been carrying pressed down harder than ever. Fame, pressure, long days, the need to always be perfect, sometimes it all caught up at once. And now, on a busy set filled with dozens of eyes, it had all come crashing down. The director hesitated, unsure what to do. A few assistants moved forward, but none of them knew how to reach her. Everyone was frozen, afraid of making it worse. That was when Keanu stepped forward. He didn't rush. He didn't shout. He didn't try to draw attention. He walked calmly, like every step was measured. The room shifted as he entered her space, his presence soft but powerful. He knelt beside her, not caring that the cameras were still rolling, not caring that everyone was watching. In a low and steady voice, he spoke her name. Ana. It's all right. You're not alone. His words were not rehearsed, not dramatic, but they carried a weight that cut through the noise. She lifted her eyes slightly, and for the first time, she saw someone who wasn't expecting her to perform, someone who wasn't waiting for her to get up and continue. She saw someone who simply wanted her to breathe. The crew stayed silent. No one dared to interrupt. In that stillness, it became clear that this was no longer about the movie or the schedule or the script. This was about a person who needed to be seen. Keanu placed his hand gently on the floor beside her, not touching her, but showing her that she had an anchor if she needed it. Ana's breathing slowed, though tears still streamed down her face. She whispered, I can't do this right now. It wasn't weakness in her voice, it was honesty. And that honesty broke the walls around the set. Keanu nodded slowly, his expression calm. Then you don't have to. Not right now. The world can wait. His tone was so steady, so filled with quiet strength, that even the director lowered his head, realizing there was no point in pushing. In that single moment, the set changed. The bright lights felt softer. The buzzing noise of cameras faded into the background, and everyone realized they were witnessing something more powerful than the scene they had been trying to film. They were watching one human being step into another's pain without hesitation, without judgment. And as Ana leaned into that silence, her shoulders finally easing just a little, the audience, the real audience, the people who would one day hear this story, would understand something deeply important. Sometimes the greatest strength doesn't come from pushing through pain. Sometimes it comes from being allowed to stop, to breathe, and to be reminded that kindness still exists in a world that demands so much. The silence after the storm. The set was quiet after that moment. No one wanted to speak too loudly, afraid they might break the fragile calm that had settled over the room. The director tried to shuffle his notes, pretending to be busy, but even he knew that something larger than the film had just happened. The crew members whispered to one another, but their voices were low, filled with a mix of confusion and respect. Anna sat on the floor, her breathing still shaky. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand, embarrassed that everyone had seen her like this. For years, she had worked to build a strong image, someone who could handle pressure, someone who never faltered. Now, in front of cameras and co-workers, she had broken down. A voice inside her whispered that she had ruined everything, that people would see her as weak. But Keanu stayed where he was, kneeling calmly beside her. His face was not filled with pity, but with understanding. That difference mattered. Pity made people feel small. Understanding made them feel seen. He spoke softly again. Anna, no one here is judging you. We've all been through something. She looked at him, her eyes still wet. But not like this. I should be stronger. Her words trembled with shame. Keanu shook his head gently. Strength isn't about never falling. It's about what you do when you've fallen. And sometimes, it's about letting someone be there with you. His voice carried no performance, no need to impress anyone. It was steady, almost fatherly, but also full of kindness. The crew shifted uncomfortably. They weren't used to this kind of raw honesty on a set. Usually, emotions were kept behind locked doors, hidden behind makeup and smiles. Now they were being asked to see something real, and though they didn't know it yet, it was changing them too. Anna closed her eyes for a moment, trying to hold on to the calm in Keanu's words. But the weight of the past months came rushing back. Long hours, endless expectations, the pressure to always be perfect. And then, behind it all, her private struggles that no one knew. She had been carrying them in silence, afraid to speak, afraid to let anyone see. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. I feel like I'm drowning. Keanu didn't flinch. Then let someone throw you a rope. He paused, giving her space. You don't have to carry everything alone. Those words landed harder than anything else. No one had ever told her that before, not in a way that felt real. People had given her advice, yes, but advice often came with judgment. Keanu's words came with patience. Slowly, she nodded. A small nod, but it was the beginning of something. The director finally cleared his throat, stepping closer. Anna, we can take a break. We'll push the schedule if we have to. His voice was different now, less commanding, more human. The crew nodded along, no one daring to argue. Anna managed a faint smile, though her eyes still glistened. Thank you. She stood slowly, and Keanu rose with her, not moving far, staying close in case she needed balance. It was a simple gesture, but it made her feel less alone. As they left the set for a private corner, the whispers behind them grew. Crew members exchanged glances, not in gossip, but in quiet respect. They had seen something rare, a star showing, her most vulnerable side, and another star protecting that moment with quiet dignity. Outside, in the cool air, Anna leaned against a wall, taking deep breaths. Keanu stood a few steps away, giving her space. He knew when to be present and when to step back. That was his gift. He never tried to take over someone's pain. He simply offered to share the silence. After a few minutes, Anna spoke again. You didn't have to do that. You could have just walked away. Keanu looked at her gently. Sometimes walking away is the easiest thing. But the right thing is often harder. I've been where you are, Anna. I know what it feels like. She turned toward him, her curiosity breaking through the fog of her sadness. You? His eyes softened, but his face stayed calm. Yes, more than once. He didn't say more, not yet. But in that moment, Anna realized something she hadn't before. Keanu wasn't just comforting her, he was speaking from a place of truth, from battles he had faced and survived. That knowledge changed everything. The truth behind his silence. The air outside was cool, but Anna felt warm under the weight of Keanu's words. She stared at him, waiting for more, unsure if he would continue. The set still buzzed quietly behind them, but out here, it felt like another world, just two people, no cameras, no audience, no masks. Keanu leaned against the wall, his eyes distant, as if remembering something far away. He spoke slowly, almost carefully, like each word carried more than it seemed. People see me smile. They see the movies, the red carpets, the jokes in interviews, but they don't see the nights when I couldn't sleep, when I felt like the world was heavier than I could carry. I've lost things that can't be replaced. I've carried grief that doesn't leave. Anna listened. Her breath caught in her chest. She had heard whispers of his past, stories in magazines and interviews, but they always felt far away, like headlines meant for other people to consume. Hearing it now from his own voice was different. It was raw, quiet, and painfully real. Keanu continued, "The hardest part isn't the pain itself. It's the silence that comes with it. When everyone expects you to be strong, you learn to hide your weakness. You learn to smile even when your heart is breaking. But the truth is, no one is unbreakable." His voice didn't shake, but there was a deep sadness in his tone. He wasn't sharing this to impress her or to make himself look wise. He was sharing it because he knew what it meant to carry a burden alone. Anna lowered her gaze, her own tears threatening to return. "So what did you do? How did you keep going?" Keanu's answer was simple. "I let kindness keep me alive. Small things. Strangers being gentle. Friends who didn't give up on me. Even little moments of silence where I felt safe. It wasn't one big thing. It was many small ones. That's how I kept walking." She closed her eyes, letting the words sink into her heart. It wasn't advice from a star. It wasn't a perfect solution. It was a truth, one that felt human and reachable. For a while, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was the kind of silence that gave space, that allowed wounds to breathe. Finally, Anna whispered, "I thought I had to do everything alone. I thought showing weakness would make people lose respect for me." Keanu shook his head softly. "Real. Respect comes when people see your humanity. Pretending to be perfect only builds walls. Letting people see the cracks, that's what connects us." Those words broke something inside her. Not in a painful way, but in a freeing way. For the first time in months, she felt like it was okay to not hold everything together. It was okay to be human. Then, suddenly, the assistant director peeked around the corner, nervous. "We're ready to resume whenever you are," he said quietly. Anna felt her chest tighten. The thought of going back in front of the cameras so soon terrified her. What if she broke again? What if everyone judged her? Keanu noticed the fear in her eyes and spoke firmly, but gently. "Listen, Anna. You don't have to go back until you're ready. No one decides that for you." He glanced at the assistant, director. "Tell them we'll take the time we need." The assistant nodded quickly and disappeared, almost relieved. Anna looked at Keanu, stunned. "You can't just stop production like that. People will be upset." Keanu smiled faintly. "Let them. A movie is not more important than a person's heart. Anyone who forgets that needs to be reminded." The words hit her deeper than anything else that day. She realized that he wasn't just helping her for this moment. He was teaching her something that could change how she lived beyond this set. For the first time, she smiled through her tears. "Thank you, Keanu. Really." He shook his head gently. "Don't thank me. Just remember, When you feel like breaking, you don't have to do it alone. Anna nodded, holding on to his words like a rope in the storm. When kindness became visible, the set tried to return to normal, but nothing felt the same. The cameras were ready, the crew stood in their places, and the director gave instructions with his usual confidence. But everyone's mind was still on what had happened. They had seen a side of Ana de Armas that few ever witnessed, and they had seen Keanu Reeves stand beside her in a way that was unforgettable. Ana returned slowly, her face calmer now, though. Her eyes still carried traces of what had happened. People gave her quiet smiles, soft nods of support. No one mocked her. No one whispered cruel things. Instead, the atmosphere felt gentler. The crew that usually rushed and shouted now moved with more patience. Something had shifted. Keanu stayed close, not hovering, but never far. He gave her space to act, but also a presence that made her feel safe. When the director called action again, Ana stepped into the scene. This time, when she let the tears come, they were different. They weren't forced. They weren't scripted in the same way. They were real, shaped by what she had just lived through. And the performance that followed was so raw, so powerful, that everyone on set went silent, even after the director called cut. The silence was long, almost sacred. Then the crew broke into quiet applause, not the usual clapping of celebration, but a softer sound, filled with respect. Ana lowered her head, overwhelmed, and Keanu gave her a small smile as if to say, "You see, you are stronger than you thought." But soon after, word began to spread. A crew member who had seen the earlier breakdown had spoken to someone outside. Whispers moved fast, and before long, stories about Ana's emotional collapse and Keanu's quiet support reached ears beyond the set. At first, Ana panicked when she heard. "What if people think I'm weak?" she said, her voice trembling as she sat in the corner of the studio later that evening. Keanu looked at her, calm as always. "Maybe they won't see weakness. Maybe they'll see truth. And sometimes truth is stronger than any performance." She didn't answer right away. She didn't believe the world was kind enough to see it that way. But Keanu's steady tone made her wonder. The next day, a journalist managed to ask about it during a press interview for the film. Ana froze, unsure how to respond. She wanted to hide, to deny it, to cover it with laughter. But before she could speak, Keanu leaned forward with his quiet authority. "Everyone has hard days," he said. Ana showed courage. It's not easy to be vulnerable in front of so many people. But what she gave us was real. And real is what truly matters. His words changed the room. The reporter, who had been waiting for a scandal, found no ground to stand on. Instead of gossip, Keanu had turned the moment into a lesson about humanity. Ana sat in silence, stunned. She hadn't expected him to defend her so openly. His kindness had been quiet on set, but now he had made it visible to the world. Later, when the cameras were off, Ana whispered, "You didn't have to do that." Keanu shook his head. "Yes, I did. Because one person's pain should never become someone else's entertainment. It should become a reason to show respect." Her chest tightened at his words. She realized something important. It wasn't just about that day on set anymore. It was about how kindness, when spoken aloud, could change how people thought and felt. And in the days that followed, she would see that truth unfold in ways she had never imagined. The story that traveled, the whispers became stories, and the stories began to travel. It started with a small post online, written by a crew member who had quietly witnessed the moment. They didn't share details that were too personal, but they described how Ana broke down and how Keanu knelt beside her, speaking words that brought her back from the edge. The post ended with a line that read, "Kindness costs nothing, but it can save someone's day." Within hours, the post spread. People shared it again and again, adding their own thoughts, their own memories of moments when kindness had changed their lives. The internet, usually filled with harsh comments and endless noise, suddenly echoed with something gentler. Anna saw the story late at night, scrolling through her phone in bed. At first, her stomach dropped. She feared judgment, feared the world, would call her weak. But as she read the comments, her heart shifted. People weren't mocking her, they were thanking her. Strangers wrote messages saying how much they related, how they too had broken down under pressure, how they had wished someone like Keanu had been there for them. Anna put her hand over her mouth, tears filling her eyes. She hadn't expected this. What she thought was her most humiliating moment had become something that inspired others. The next day, when she walked onto the set, people greeted her differently. They didn't treat her like a star they had to serve. They treated her like a human being. The respect was deeper, warmer, more real. Keanu noticed the change too, but he said nothing. He simply gave her a knowing look, as if to remind her that this was exactly what he had meant. Later that week, during a public event, a young fan came up to Anna nervously. She was maybe 17, holding her phone with shaking hands. "I just wanted to say thank you," the girl whispered. "I read about what happened. I've been struggling too. And seeing that even someone like you can go through it, it makes me feel less alone." Anna's chest tightened. She didn't know what to say at first. Finally, she bent down, looking the girl in the eyes, and said softly, "You're never alone. Don't ever believe that you are." The girl smiled through tears, and for the first time, Anna felt the true weight of what had happened. Her breakdown had turned into a bridge, connecting her to people she never knew she could reach. That night, she sat with Keanu on the edge of the set, watching the crew pack up for the day. The golden light of the setting sun fell across the floor, and for a long time, neither of them spoke. Finally, Anna broke the silence. "I used to think being perfect was the only way people would respect me. But now I see, maybe being real is what makes people trust you." Keanu nodded slowly, his eyes calm. "People don't remember perfection. They remember honesty. They remember kindness. Those are the things that stay." Anna looked at him, her voice soft. "You were right. The world didn't see weakness. They saw truth." Keanu gave her a small smile, the kind that carried quiet wisdom. Truth always finds a way to shine, even when we try to hide it. The words lingered in the air like a promise. The final lesson days passed, but the story didn't fade. Instead, it grew. Newspapers, blogs, and television segments picked it up, not as gossip, not as scandal, but as inspiration. People were tired of empty headlines filled with negativity. This story, of a star who broke down and another who showed her kindness, was different. It was honest, human, and uplifting. Anna tried to stay grounded as the attention grew. She told herself it was only temporary, that soon the world would move on. But when she walked down the street, strangers stopped her, not to ask for selfies or autographs, but to say thank you. They thanked her for showing vulnerability, for reminding them that even people who seemed untouchable could struggle too. One evening, while filming late, a storm knocked out power on set. The lights flickered, and for a moment, fear spread among the crew. The schedule was ruined, the cameras went dark, and everyone grew restless. Voices rose in frustration. People argued about lost time. Anna felt the tension creeping in. The old version of herself would have panicked, would have tried to hold it all together while hiding her fear. But now, something inside her was different. She took a breath, stood up, and spoke gently, but clearly. "It's just a storm. The lights will come back. We'll figure it out. Let's just stay calm." The crew turned to her, surprised. Her voice wasn't commanding, but it carried weight. Slowly, the argument stopped, and the room settled. In the dim light, people began to relax, some even laughing at how tense they had become over something so small. Keanu, standing nearby, watched her with quiet pride. Later, as the storm faded and the lights returned, he walked over to her and said, "You see, you're stronger than you ever thought. Not because you didn't break, but because you learned how to rise again." Anna looked at him, her eyes glowing with gratitude. "You taught me that. You gave me the space to fall without shame. I'll never forget it." Keanu shook his head softly. "No, Anna. I only reminded you. The strength was always yours." She smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in months. She realized that what she once saw as her worst moment, the breakdown on set, had become the turning point of her journey. It wasn't the day she lost control, it was the day she discovered her own resilience. The film eventually wrapped, and months later, when it premiered, the audience was captivated not only by the story on the screen, but by the story behind the scenes, the one that had traveled far and wide, inspiring countless people. And when Anna stood on stage during the premiere, she didn't wear the mask of perfection anymore. She spoke honestly. "We are all human. We all have days when we fall apart. But I learned something important. That kindness, even the smallest kind, can help us stand again. And for that, I am grateful." The crowd erupted in applause, not just for her performance, but for her truth. Keanu, standing in the shadows, gave her a small nod. It was enough. She didn't need more. Because sometimes, the greatest gift isn't saving someone, it's reminding them they were strong enough all along, and as the night ended, Anna carried that lesson with her, not just for herself, but for everyone who would ever feel the same weight she once carried.